Welcome to Too Many Lawyers. I'm Royal Oaks.
And I'm Connor Oaks.
And Connor, I guess we need to talk about the pardon issue.
I guess we should probably talk about the biggest news story in the world at the moment.
Yeah, very interesting the way they dropped the bomb on a Sunday evening.
Well,
too late for the papers to report it the next morning.
Yeah.
New York Times, LA Times, pardon? What pardon?
Yeah. What even is it?
Yeah, so we'll get to the pardon, but I had an interesting week at the gym. You know, I try to keep fit, and
good to know.
I saw a lady with a really
is
interesting
that a bit
tattoo.
of a brag there?
I wanted to get your millennial take on the tattoo.
On the lady's tattoo, okay.
Yeah, so she's working on the machine in front of me, and
Right.
The back of her upper right arm is in a rectangle, nicely printed. It says, "You are beautiful." You are beautiful.
How nice.
Now, I'm not a huge, as you can tell, I have very few neck tattoos.
Oh, okay.
No teardrops.
Right.
And so, I'm not really tattooed. But I thought, I looked at this and I thought, that is such a nice sentiment.
Yeah.
But then I got thinking a little further and I thought, what if she's walking along or just working out and Jose Menendez was right behind her and he is being told, "You are beautiful."
That's not one of the brothers. That's the dad,
Jose's
right?
the dad.
Jose's the dad.
Don't you spend your time watching Netflix and the Menendez brothers special?
Not enough time, clearly.
Okay, so I had a problem with that, and I guess the other aspect is, ABBA had a great song, "I Have a Dream."
They had a lot of great songs.
Amanda Seyfried, just such an incredible voice, and there's a line in her song that has always bothered me. She says, "I believe in angels, something good in everything I see." Something good in everything I see. Now, Connor, just stick with me here, and I want your feedback.
I'm with you. Uh-huh.
What if Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz mud wrestled for charity to raise money for the Proud Boys?
Oh.
Is there anything good in that? Or is Amanda Seyfried a big fat liar?
Maybe Amanda Seyfried is very careful to only see things that have good in them. She is aware that Marjorie and Matt are putting on this racist fundraiser, and so she averts her eyes. So she never sees. So it was really more of a statement about the way that she sculpts her world, such that she, as a celebrity, only has to see things that are good.
So in other words, you're an Amanda apologist.
Or maybe it's more of a statement really about a perspective to have on the world, to do your best to see the good in every situation, even if sometimes you do see a baby bird fall out of a nest and think, well, there's nothing good about that, except it's a snack for the cat.
Bottom line, I liked it. It made me feel warm all over. And then when I got to thinking, I'm going to give this lady a piece of my mind when I see her in the gym again, because you always see the same people over and over.
Yeah, that's what they say, is approach women you don't know in the gym and comment on their tattoos. They love it.
If I recognize her, because, as you go to the gym, you change,
you start
to
become gym buddies.
All right, let's talk partying. So plenty of really super substantive issues to talk about, but there are a couple of weird ones that were rattling around in my head I wanted to run by you. First of all, did Hunter know this was coming? Now, when David Muir of ABC interviewed Joe Biden in Normandy, I think it was May or June, maybe it was the anniversary of D-Day, so it probably was early June. David Muir asked him specifically, will you respect the verdict that is given in your son's case? And he said, yes. One word, no explanation. Is a pardon off the table? Have you rejected the idea of a pardon? And Joe said, yes.
Yes.
Okay. So that was the position, and the press secretary said it many times. Now we move to September, and Hunter Biden entered a plea with respect to his tax case. Because remember, he'd been convicted in the gun case back in Delaware. And so now in September, he shows up, and he says, yeah, guilty, Your Honor. Now, nobody pleads guilty, Connor. People do a plea deal. He fought like a tiger to get a plea deal in connection with the Delaware thing. True. You get a little something off. A little indicated. The prosecution will say, we'll go easy on you. There was no deal. It was just Now, my question is, did they have a little Labor Day celebration at the Biden family compound in Delaware? And was Hunter clued into the fact that, you're going to go in for your plea in a week? Don't you worry. You just plead guilty, that's fine. Because, it makes it look even sneakier. If that's true, I'm surprised Hunter didn't look at the judge and say, guilty, sock it to me, whatever you want, Judge. And by the way, you're a partisan hack, and I've seen pictures of your wife. She's been hit by the ugly stick. Sentencing is in December. I'll be there. Have a nice day. Have a bitchin' summer, Judge.
Sign a lot of yearbooks, I guess. Hunter did. He's a popular guy. He probably did sign a lot of yearbooks.
Do you have the same suspicion I have?
I don't have that suspicion because I see, and I mean, if that is the case, it is the case. And in the end, I don't think it changed the substantive moral quality of deciding then or now to pardon your son in this circumstance. But I see another possible motivation. I see that there was enormous political power just in that pleading, in that situation, in saying, I take full responsibility. Biden is associated with Hunter. Hunter and Biden are both associated with Kamala. We are at that point gearing up for the election. It would look politically damaging, perhaps, to plead guilty, take a plea deal, and say, oh, well, yeah, I'm trying to cut a deal and trying to escape some sort of punishment. There's another possible explanation that Hunter, like he has been this whole time, has been under advisement of the Democratic political machine. They wanted to have him come out and say, I take full responsibility for all of my actions. I'm aware that they were all criminal, and I'm going to plead guilty with no attempt to take a plea.
Yeah,
so
that's
right. One possible explanation for that weird timing. But you're right. It does. It does cause one to be a little bit more suspicious, but really, there's no need to be more suspicious about what happened. We know what happened. Probably, whether it was over Labor Day meal or Thanksgiving meal, which is the other theory. Hunter says, "Dad, come on," and Joe says, "What do I care? I'm not going to run again." So let's let her rip.
We'll have to wait for the books to get the true story. All right, point number 2. I don't mean to bum you out, but you lost.
Too late.
You lost a chance to win big. DraftKings and Predict It and a few other betting sites.
Don't tell me the odds.
For a long time, they set the odds based on public opinion polls.
Right.
And everybody in America, answered the pollsters, and 76% of Americans said no pardon, no clemency. 24% said yeah, he's going to do it. Based on that, if you had bet $10,000 that he will pardon Hunter, you would have won $35,000.
Oh, my Lord.
A net of $25,000.
Yeah.
So are you kind
missed out.
Kind of unhappy that you did do
this podcast brought to you by Draft. Oh, no, wait. We're not sponsored yet. Come at us, giant gambling establishment. We will sell our souls for any amount of money.
I've been telling so many people, bet on this.
Sure.
And your mom said, no, I don't think that he's going to issue a pardon.
I didn't think so either. I would have put good money, maybe 3-1, sure, like they did, on the fact that he wasn't going to, because they haven't, but I mean, I think if it's a different outcome to the election, it's a whole different ballgame. And we may not really have done the reanalysis where we all said, okay, we all expect, because we're, Democrat pilled, that they sort of, controlled the narrative going into the election. Oh, Trump lost last time. He's not going to win again. Kamala's going to take it. It might be close. We're all sweating, but she's going to take it. And so at that point, Hunter doesn't have nearly as much to worry about with a Harris administration. Now you have the fear that without a pardon, Trump and his goons will do some really, really egregious stuff with the Department of Justice and generally the federal charges against Hunter. And so Joe said, I'm not putting my son through that. Let's pull the ripcord. Did the Predict It and all the other betting analyses groups do the reanalysis thoroughly enough to come up with the best odds on this one and whether it was going to happen? Maybe. It is, unlikely events happen, right? Nate Silver got a lot of flack back in 2016, or I guess 2015, when he said, it was 2016, right, the election? Well, the whole thing was years long. He said, Trump's going to lose 90% of the time, right? Or 11% of the time he beats Hillary. So then it happened and everybody jumped down Nate's throat and said, you are bad at statistics. And he turned around and said, no, y'all are bad at statistics. 11% of the time it was always going to happen. So don't look at me when an unlikely occurrence happens. If you flip a coin 10 times in a row, you're going to get some runs of heads and tails that look unlikely.
Right.
You flip them 100 times in a row, you're going to get enormously long strings of heads that look unlikely. So, these things happen, and over the Thanksgiving meal, I bet Hunter was kicking his dad under the table. Hey, you pardoned the turkey, but you won't pardon me? Come on, buddy.
So when we come back, is the legacy of Joe Biden tainted by this pardon? We'll get into that issue when we return on Too Many Lawyers. Welcome back. This is Too Many Lawyers. I'm Royal Oakes.
And I'm Connor Oakes.
And the question I want to address, Connor, is, doggone it, does this hurt the Joe Biden legacy? Now, I think my attitude is, are you kidding me? After June 27, the debate, and he was yanked off the ticket, I don't think anybody is going to think about this at all. It's just going to be an asterisk to his legacy. Now, a little later in the show, I want to talk about whether or not maybe there was an improper motive to get everybody in the Biden family off the hook, not as to tax and gun charges, but everything. But setting that aside for the moment, do you think that this really significantly, substantively has changed the Biden legacy, given all the other problems he's had?
Yeah, I do think it does. I think a lot of the criticism of Biden over the years, while some of it warranted, I've certainly felt that, not that I have really the platform to criticize Joe Biden and send my followers after him or anything, but I have felt that I should criticize Joe Biden for many things he's done. Primarily his failure to solve, or better, attempt to solve, the problem in Gaza at the moment. That's his most recent large problem that he's not lived up to as president. But a lot of his issues are easy to write off as political, attacks by the right that he fended off as best he could and did his best under the circumstances. Here, I think that his legacy will be significantly marred by just how hard a position he took one direction, saying, I am absolutely not going to pardon my son. I'm going to respect the outcome of the court cases and all that, and then reversing course. Now, I'll say, you bring up his performance at the debates. I don't think that mars his legacy whatsoever. People look at that and say, wow, he had a really bad debate because he's
people look at that and say he's cognitively impaired.
But, I mean...
It wasn't a bad night.
Oh, yeah, but he had a bad night because he was cognitively impaired. He's not capable of being the politician he once was, or the president he once was, frankly. But does that affect his legacy? Not in my view.
Don't you think his legacy is fundamentally that he lost it? And he created a situation by not sticking to his sort of promise, I'm going to be a one-term president, and then, emboldened by the fact that they did pretty well in the off-year elections in his first term, he said, I'm going to run, and he hid, or his people hid, his impairment, creating this problem for the Democrats that led to a disaster where she loses, the Senate is lost, the House is lost.
You're right. All that is built into his legacy, and the legacy of somebody who made these bad decisions. But frankly, somebody who's in cognitive decline makes bad decisions. Right. I don't look at Jimmy Carter now, what is he, 140 years old, and say his legacy is that he's really old and probably would be a bad president today. No, he had his heyday. He made his mistakes. He had his successes. I can't think of any right now, but apparently he had some. That was a cruel joke.
Sorry,
Jimmy Carter's a fan. I think Jimmy was a great president, and he gets a bad rap.
I'll give him semi-great.
Just making a joke. But yeah.
How about Quattro great?
Yeah, I think the legacy that will come out of this event is actually Jon Stewart on The Daily Show on Monday last night had the take on it that I think is a pretty good one. Not only did Joe Biden make this a massive purity test, but every other Democrat, mainstream Democrat, who wanted to speak out against Trump and the fact that Trump pardoned his, daughter's father-in-law and now made him ambassador to France, good Lord, for hiring a hooker a sex worker to try to frame his brother, I think was this guy's.
It was pretty ugly.
It was a weird situation. Yeah. So he gets pardoned for that and then becomes an ambassador. And they want to poke fun at that. They want to insult Trump over that. They want to have a purity test of moral righteousness and say, we respect the rule of law. Look at Hunter Biden. Anybody, nobody's above the law, even the son of the president. And then this happens. This is on Joe Biden for making them look bad, and it's on them for setting this standard and deciding the pardon has this moral status, and we're going to try to attack somebody politically for not living up to this ideal, this platonic ideal of Joe Biden that he is not has not lived up to in this scenario. He has had the weakness, or some would say strength of character, because sometimes it's a pardon is mercy. It's there. Like its function. We may get into this a little bit later, but what is the pardon really all about?
Compassion? Maybe the justice system didn't work properly?
Maybe these were politically motivated charges. Maybe he never would have been charged if he hadn't been the president's son. Maybe he would have had better opportunities to, get out of this with a better plea deal that he couldn't take politically because it would look bad for the Democrats and be bad for America. Right. Who knows? Whatever you think of the fact that the president has the pardon, he chose in this scenario to use it. Maybe that's good. Maybe that's bad.
So let's shift gears to the January 6th pardons.
Sure.
Trump has already indicated that, this is a double standard, this is hypocrisy.
Yep.
645 people have been sentenced in connection with January 6th.
Yeah.
One guy got 22 years, one guy got 20, one got 18. Do you think this is going to trigger basically a mass pardon? Jimmy Carter, speaking of Jimmy, he gave a mass pardon to every Vietnam War draft dodger all at once. So there's a precedent for, a really giant...
Another Jimmy Carter win. I'm sorry I cast aspersions on your name. Yeah, I think that this was...
Is this going to be hard for the Democrats to criticize Trump when Trump lets all the Proud Boys and everybody else out?
No, I think the Democrats will be happy to continue to criticize, and I think that they will be right to continue to criticize because every pardon is individual and different. Just because Joe thinks Hunter got a raw deal, whether he's right or wrong about that, Hunter definitely did some crimes, but nobody's saying he didn't do them. They're saying that it is the right thing to do for him to be shown mercy. Is it the right thing to do for the January 6th rioters who tried to, maybe end democracy, be given mercy or clemency for what they did under their own specific circumstances? It really has nothing to do with this pardon any more than any other pardon in the past of a accused murderer, spared from the electric chair at the last minute has anything to do with the January 6th rioters.
So
was it, after all, a political thing for Biden to pardon his son? No, of course, it's anti-political. It's horrible for the Democrats for him to have done this. So it's only the argument about whether the underlying charges are political. So are the underlying charges against the January 6th rioters actually insurrectionists, actually politically motivated? In my opinion, obviously not. We all agree they did it in the same way we all agree Hunter did it. But the question is somehow, if not for the politics of the moment, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party fighting over the 2024 election or the 2026 mid-season elections, would they not be pursuing the January 6th insurrectionists? Would we be sort of saying, okay, well, that's done and passed and not a big deal, and we don't need to charge them and try to put more of them in jail or other penalties? If not for politics, in my view, obviously, politics is intrinsically tied to the justice system. Every law that criminalizes human action is inherently political. Laws are passed by politicians. But in this circumstance, it's pretty clear. They broke in, they beat up a bunch of cops, they smeared feces on senators' desks. To prosecute them for that and for trying to upset the concept of democracy and install Trump as a king, which many of them intended and hoped by their violent actions, that's not a political thing to be doing, to be pursuing them. So I think they're totally disconnected.
All right, let's talk about the scope of the pardon. Are you troubled by the fact that this wasn't a pardon of, he was convicted by a jury in connection with the gun charge in Delaware, and he pled guilty in connection with the tax in Los Angeles federal court. But we're going beyond that. But wait, there's more, like they say on TV. The pardon goes back to January 1, 2014.
Yeah, 11 years,
right?
Which
is 90 days before Hunter went on the board of Burisma, the Ukrainian natural gas company.
Right.
And so the entire decade through December 1, 2024, any federal crime he committed, including murder or anything else, any federal law on the
murder
books,
generally a state statute. But if he tried to murder the president or something, that would be a federal crime. Yeah.
So a lot of people now who are kind of shocked at the pardon news now, they're really
very
wondering,
weird.
Gee, is this, the Republicans say it was the Biden crime family and it's China and Ukraine and this and that, and they haven't quite gotten the smoking gun, but the Republicans are going to keep going after it.
Right.
And the Democrats knew that. I mean, is it really appropriate for Joe Biden to immunize himself and his entire family by taking Hunter out of the picture in terms of criminalizing or being able to go after him for anything in the last decade?
Well, I think there's two factors here. One, if you're going to look bad politically, you might as well, if you're Joe Biden, just rip the Band-Aid off and go all the way. Because is he really going to get much more criticism for this kind of a pardon than he would have for a very narrowly tailored pardon? Because could he have dodged any bullets of criticism there? Probably not. So that's step one.
I think he is getting more criticism because let's face it, when the guy has lost one son, and now his only remaining son is looking at spending years maybe in federal prison, and because he was in the throes of addiction and his life totally spiraled out of control. Most people are going to cut Joe some slack, but I think the criticism is going to mount over the fact that he didn't just do that. It's the full decade. It's the whole Burisma thing. It's all the international stuff.
Well, the other factor there is that the reasoning, official reasoning, and everybody understands reasoning, is that Joe Biden, personally, I'm sure, believes that these are politically motivated charges, never would have been brought against Hunter, or at least wouldn't have been as serious, and they wouldn't have run up such big charges and tried to go after him and get jail time and all the rest if he hadn't been Joe Biden's son. So Joe Biden probably feels responsible in part for this, sort of bringing his son into this whole political situation.
And that's what the Republicans are calling.
Of course, yeah. If we just keep saying
you paused, so you gave me the opening.
It's true. If we just keep saying it, it might become true. He probably feels responsible for him, but I think as we'll get into a little bit later, this broad pardon actually has implications for what Hunter will have to testify about.
And let's talk about that now.
Right.
When you get a pardon, that means you have no criminal exposure.
You're free.
For 10 years federal crimes. That means you can't take the Fifth.
The Fifth Amendment says I have the right not to incriminate myself, and therefore I refuse to testify because this could be used against me in a criminal proceeding and I could end up locked up. Well, if you can't end up locked up because you got pardoned, you can't say I won't testify.
So now when the Republicans in the committees in Congress and when prosecutors, the DOJ, advance against Hunter Biden or people in his family or in his business orbit, he has to talk.
Right.
And if he doesn't talk, he could be in contempt of court.
Right.
If he says, I don't know, I don't remember, when the evidence shows that he's lying, now he's got 5 years in perjury, so he's going to see the inside of a federal jail cell
for that.
All.
No, and that threatens possible politically motivated or legitimate prosecutions against lots of other people, including Joe Biden and Hunter himself. And I think that by the breadth of this pardon, for people who understand that concept that you can no longer plead the Fifth, they recognize that, this super broad pardon, in a way, actually is Joe Biden exposing himself and many of his associates to potential politically motivated actions, criminal actions, investigations by Congress or whatever else. So it doesn't actually, to me, look like a presidential overreach and something that Joe Biden shouldn't have done morally. It actually looks like it exposes him personally to more because his son may have to testify against him. So in a way, you can actually say that this is that this is not necessarily a greedy or selfish thing for Joe Biden to have done, to have formulated the pardon this way.
Takes a good lawyer to
make that argument.
To make that argument. Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, that leads us into our final issue.
Sure. Yeah.
It's a double hypocrisy charge that you can bet the Republicans will make down the road.
Oh my Lord, they already
The first half of the hypocrisy is, I wouldn't be surprised if on January 20 Joe pardons himself.
Sure.
Even though the Democrats have been saying, Trump's going to pardon himself, and that's wrong. It's anathema to... Larry Tribe, the constitutional expert from Harvard Law School, says, you can't pardon yourself, even though the Founding Fathers said, okay, presidential pardon, there are two exceptions. One, it has to be only federal, and number two, it can't be related to impeachment. So we, the founders, thought about exceptions, came up with two of them, and so most constitutional scholars say these were really smart guys. If they wanted to ban a self-pardon, they would have, and they could have, and they didn't.
True.
And so probably the Supreme Court will say, a self-pardon is okay. Will Joe say, I don't trust the Trump-controlled Congress and the Trump-controlled DOJ not to come after me personally, so Hunter got it, and I got it too. It's a family affair.
I think you're absolutely right. That is entirely possible that he might do that. And the ultimate 180 IQ brilliant move, you pardon yourself as Joe Biden on the way out. It goes up to the Trump-controlled Supreme Court, and they say, no, how dare you, Joe Biden? I won't let you pardon yourself. Presidents can't pardon themselves. And then, boom, you get Trump.
And that leads us to the final element of the hypocrisy issue. Joe doesn't pardon himself.
Right, okay.
Joe gets charged by the Trump-controlled Department of Justice.
Theoretically.
And what does Joe say? Well, the United States Supreme Court on July 1, 2024 said I have immunity
United
as
States
to
versus
my
Trump,
core
baby.
constitutional duties.
Yeah.
So now we have Joe either pardoning himself
Right.
or praising the legitimacy of the Supreme Court decision.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing.
I mean, it's like Joe is taking a bath in a pool of hypocrisy.
Well, what he's doing...
Am I being too harsh on the poor guy?
He's causing all the Democrats who tried to set up these moral purity tests to take a bath. They are setting themselves up to now suffer the consequences of having tried to hold politicians to a really high standard, only likely to soon discover that politicians are always going to exploit every loophole possible.
Right.
And yet, I am a very political animal, not a politician myself, but I want my politicians to fight hard. I want the people that ideologically represent me and I agree with to use every loophole, right? If there is a slightly shady mechanism of the justice system and the courts and politics in Congress that my representatives, President AOC in 2028 can use to save the planet from turning into a burning cinder at the behest of fossil fuel executives getting their 28th home, I will say, AOC, please do it. Use that loophole. Take that back door. So I understand the cutthroat nature of politics, but the Democrats have chosen to portray themselves in a light, had to get on TV and say the only way you're a good person and not a scummy politician is that you don't pardon your son and that you don't pardon your daughter's father-in-law who hires sex workers to frame their brother. And it's wrong to use the pardon this way. Instead of saying the power of the president is to grant these pardons. It is what it is. Trump did it. What are you going to say? I mean, we elected him emperor of the universe. That's kind of what president is. So you said when you check the box to vote Trump or check the box to vote Biden, you're saying implicitly, I want him to use his personal judgment about how to use a pardon in a maybe ridiculous or potentially self-serving way.
Well, I'll leave you with this thought. I've been thinking about it the last minute or so since you made the comment. I think I would rather live...
You actually listen to me?
Yes. I would think I would rather live on a cinder than live in a nation where AOC is president. But maybe I'm overreacting.
Can't wait, can't wait.
We hope you haven't been exhausted by the show. There's a little bit more. There's premium content coming up, and you don't even have to pay for it. So I have put up on YouTube about a 2.5-minute report on the pardon issue. I hope you check it out there, or just stay tuned because we're going to roll it right now at the conclusion of this episode. And thank you so much for watching Too Many Lawyers. We will see you next week. The blockbuster news about the Hunter Biden pardon has resulted in a lot of talk about weaponization of the legal system and no man is above the law. But beneath the surface, there are a lot of inside baseball legal issues at work. Of course, if Steve Martin wanted a pardon, he'd know how to ask for it.
Well, excuse me.
But this isn't showbiz, it's real life. Some say the president wasn't exactly honest when, some months ago, he addressed the pardon issue.
Will you accept the jury's outcome, their verdict, no matter what it is?
Yes.
And have you ruled out a pardon for your son?
Yes.
Lots of folks objected to Donald Trump getting special treatment, and others now argue the Bidens shouldn't either. But some say the scope of the pardon is stunning and suspicious. It covers a full decade, 2014 to the present. It's not just about his tax and gun convictions. The 10-year span began just 4 months before Hunter joined the board of Burisma, the Ukrainian natural gas company. Was Dad's pardon directed at Hunter's upcoming sentencing in his 2 criminal cases, or did it have a broader purpose? And then there's the question of Trump's possible pardon of January 6 defendants. Is it now certain? So far, 645 people have been sentenced, some for terms of over 20 years. How about a self-pardon? Democrats have said that's illegal. But on January 20, will Biden say, I just don't trust the Trump-controlled DOJ and Congress. I'm giving myself a pardon.
Why are you choosing to leave now, Mr. Biden? Why not stay a while?
Hunter can't take the 5th. That's only for those with criminal exposure. So will the GOP be able to grill him in Congress and in court about their theories on Biden family crimes? So the rich tradition of presidential pardons continues. Bill Clinton pardoned his brother, who'd been convicted of cocaine possession. George H.W. Bush pardoned 6 Iran-Contra figures. Jimmy Carter pardoned every single Vietnam War draft dodger. Lincoln's successor pardoned every single Confederate soldier. And then there's the granddaddy of them all, Gerald Ford, ending our long national nightmare with his pardon of Richard Nixon. Not to bum you out, but if you had placed a wager on whether or not Joe Biden would pardon his son, you could have made a lot of money if you went to DraftKings or PredictIt, and if you put down $10,000, they would have paid you $35,000. For Too Many Lawyers, I'm Royal Oakes.